And we are live. Hi, welcome everyone to our 46th episode of Wicked Connected, connecting and supporting the networking power of listening. So I want to welcome both Dan and Lynne from the SparkLit Group. Dan is a military technologist, author, and juggler. And Lynne has spent 23 years in healthcare and now is a recovering triathlete. So thank you both for joining us today. Starting off, tell us about a networking event that you guys have been to recently that you enjoyed and tell us why.
So, hey, everybody, thanks for having us on the show. Excited to be here. Just last week, Lynne and I were at a networking event together called the Ampersand Gathering. And one of the networking activities they had us do was something called signboard networking. So you have a few minutes and you fill out this little piece of paper that shows like, what is something you want? What is something you want to give? And what's just a topic people could talk to you about? So I put, I'm looking for role models for our new business. Would love to talk to people about how to write a book. I've written 4 books. And podcasting and juggling are 2 just general topics I would love to talk about. Would you believe I met somebody who is in the same type of business that we're in, but a few years ahead, and was looking for people to mentor, and she wanted to write a book. So she's got a card that has these 2 things just reversed, and we had a lovely conversation. This is a great way to like not waste your time on networking. We really found it to be really an interesting and productive way to spend that time.
It's really cool. I haven't seen it before.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about the format? Like, were you all, was it like speed networking where you're sitting at tables and you have to kind of hold it up? Or is it just like a sign you put around your neck that you got to walk around a room and people like, yeah, same.
So you held it up. A lot of people were standing. Everyone eventually stood up and walked around with this. So that's why it was important to write really big and clearly. And then you just sort of walked around like at a cocktail party until you found someone. And it wasn't hard to find someone. I don't know, like I always have these sweaty palms, like I'm going to be the last one picked for kickball, but it's not like that. It was fun.
Right. And like not everybody had a perfect match of the 2, like mine and Jill, who I spoke with. But like Lynne wrote triathlon on hers and she's like, nobody's going to want to talk about triathlons. Oh my goodness, she found somebody who wanted to talk about triathlons.
I have someone you can talk to triathlons about as well.
Okay, because I don't know if you know this about people who do triathlons. It's pretty much all we like to talk about.
Yeah.
So you know what? Go ahead.
I'm thinking about like this thing that I'm having this like flashback to like high school where we learned about this probability problem called the birthday problem. And it's like this problem. This is like, what are the odds that 2 people in the same room will have the same birthday? Of course, it always got a little screwed up because it was me. I have a twin brother, but like we only got to count as 1. But it turns out like the odds that you will find somebody go like over 50% like after 30 people or something. And so it's interesting. I mean, I was just thinking about like what are the chances that, even if there's something very small likelihood, like, I'm a triathlete or whatever, you get in a room of more than, 30 people and you're pretty likely to find somebody who's gonna, match that. That's really cool. I've never seen that before.
It reminds me a little bit of our networking bingo that we did. So we did an event or I guess it wasn't so recently now. It was a couple, in the spring. And we passed out bingo cards with like random facts about ourselves or about each other's selves. And the goal was in the room of people, we asked everyone, you have to go get bingo pretty much. So it was a good way for people to run around and just like rapid fire questions about each other to figure out a common ground. But I like what you guys did even better. It makes it way more relevant to networking, and what a great way to easily walk into a room and find common ground to start a conversation with a complete stranger.
So we need to make sure we give credit. I think this was created by a guy named Lee Gimpel, Gimpel, and it's called Signboards of Interest.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I'm going to keep that in mind if I have to do a panel again on networking. I'm going to make people do that.
Right. This really kind of piggybacks. I mean, we didn't create this, but we loved it. But this piggybacks on a conversation Lynne and I had a while back about how do we define success in our networking events?
Yeah.
Because we'd been to an event, and Lynne, you should tell the story about how you felt after that event. Was it a successful event or not? And how that discussion sort of reframed what it means to have a successful networking event. Is it quantity? Is it quality?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know, Lynne, if you had a reaction to that, but
so it happens a lot. Dan will like tee me up to tell some story, and I'm like, I don't know if I know that.
Like Dan, you already told it.
So let me tell the story that I think I remember Lynne telling me. I didn't want to tell your story. Coming back from a networking event and thinking like, I'm not sure it was a very successful networking event. I only talked to like 2 people, but I had a really good, deep connection with these 2. I was hoping to have talked to more. And then as we sort of discussed, like, well, is the goal of these events to meet everybody and to learn an interesting fact about all of them, or to build maybe a deeper connection that might actually lead to a partnership or a project or a collaboration? And so
Which actually, so I'm going to interrupt because now I'm taking over my story. It's actually, I have a little bit of an allergic reaction to the word networking, and I'm not allowed to say that on a podcast.
No, you can.
But I prefer the word connecting, and I think that's what Wicked Connected is about. It is about making connections, and just thinking about connecting with people sort of lowers my heart rate instead of networking, where I feel like it's about collecting business cards and it's a really air-conditioned room and there's bad wine and rubbery chicken. So connecting is really about just what Dan said, right? It's making a couple of deeper, more meaningful connections.
Right.
So before we dive too much deeper, because we're having a great conversation here and I don't mean to break it up, but I would love to understand. So what, you all are the co-founders of the SparkLit Group. Would love to hear a little bit about what you do in your day-to-day work, and how does networking play into that, or connecting?
You want to kick that off?
Sure. So we still don't have an elevator pitch. I'm just going to confess right now.
That's okay.
We really, though, formed around helping all kinds of organizations tackle their thorniest problems. And the way we help them do it is through collaborating with each other, understanding what innovation is and how to do it together. So Dan and I, in 2024, led 11 innovation workshops together. And we were like, wow, this is really fun. We're really good at it. What would it look like if instead of doing it in 10% of our time, we did it 100% of our time and we did it together? And so that's really what we do, and a little bit about the origin story of the SparkLit Group. So Dan, what would you add?
Yeah, so we just launched 3 months ago, so still early days. I like to say that we help teams work together more effectively to deliver innovative solutions to hard problems. So we help them innovate faster. We help them navigate complexity. We help them build healthy, sustainable, evolving cultures of innovation. So a lot of that is about communication and collaboration, creativity. I'm an author, as we mentioned. I guess like triathletes, if somebody's an author, they probably tell you pretty quickly. So written 4 books. So the content from the books is a lot of the source material for the work that we do. Lynne is a certified leadership coach. And so a lot of what we do, in addition to like leading workshops and facilitating sessions, it's asking good questions and listening closely and creating space for people to talk out loud as we're listening and trying to help them connect some dots.
Getting a little bit of the elevator pitch in there, so you're on the way.
Well, and we always say, like, does anyone really buy anything in an elevator? I get that it needs to be short, but maybe not so short for an elevator ride. I just want to jump in on something Dan said, which was about listening. Sure. I think that is maybe an under talked about critical skill when it comes to networking and connecting, is really paying attention to what the other person is telling you and being super curious, and not just like thinking about what you're going to say next, but what they're telling you that you want to learn more about them.
Right. It's interesting that you say that. I have this thing. I've been doing groups recently with job seekers who are often people who, if they were like me, were in sort of, corporate, non-sales corporate jobs, and they are like, I've never had to network in my life. And so you basically say to them, like 80% of job seekers are going to find their next job through networking. And they're like, nah, And so one of the things that I've been doing with this group of job seekers is talking about networking. And one of the things that I talk about is this idea of listening for the doorbell to ring, right? It's like, how do you ask questions and listen to hear if they need something that you can help them with, as opposed to starting with, here's what I could help you with. Do you need that? Which is sort of the inverse of what you're looking for. So I don't know. What you're saying definitely rings true with me. Like, there's a little pun there that I didn't intend. But
Jeff, what are some of your other favorite questions when you're talking to folks about networking and asking questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I would say for me, some of my favorite questions, I'll ask people like, what's going well. I'll ask them, for me, I also do leadership coaching. So I often ask people like, how big is your team? And if they say they have a big team or a small team or whatever, I'll ask them, oh, how's it going with your team? And then that often leads people to start spilling the beans about how they're frustrated with their, or I don't know how to deal with this problem or whatever it is. The other question that I like to ask people, this just came up on a call, I think this morning. I often ask people the question, if things went perfectly over the next year, what would be true a year from now, as one of my favorite questions to ask. Lynne, I'm sure you're nodding because you've got that coaching background. It's like, there's something about asking people like where they want to be that also has a tendency to bring up all the things that they're like, worried that they're not going to be able to accomplish, and sort of brings up those challenges and problems. And to me, it's all about listening for people to share a problem so that you can say, oh, I've got a solution to that, which, by the way, might be you, or it might be somebody or it might be some other some other resource you have or whatever. So that's I don't know, what do you have favorite go-to questions that either of you like to ask when you're...
Well, I love those questions, and I do love that one about what would be true a year from now. I'm thinking even more broadly, so not necessarily leadership coaching questions, but I love to ask people, like, what do you love about where you grew up? Or tell me about your most memorable dinner. The answers to that are so fascinating, and you learn things about people that you probably wouldn't have learned in other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of our favorite icebreaker, ice melter questions is, when you were 8 years old, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
And what that does to the room and just the mental space that puts people in when they're going to get into a workshop around innovation. It brings them back to their childhood and their initial interests and passions. And there's always laughter. And I wanted to be a truck when I was 8. There's some really funny answers and some poignant answers. But I just want to jump back real quick and highlight something that Lynne did just a minute ago. So Jeff shared a tip, and Lynne's response was, instead of immediately jumping in and sharing a tip too, Jeff, that was a great tip. Do you have another tip that you want to share? And then Jeff, you return the favor by saying, hey, this is the second one. And now do you have one? Right. And that move, when we're, I hate to call it a move, but when we're talking with people at a networking event, listening for the opportunity to ask the next question, as opposed to waiting for the opportunity to sort of share our own opinion, really changes the dynamic of how we spend our time in these discussions.
Yeah. I think, and if you do networking enough too, I think questions start to come naturally. And then you start to because I know when I first started networking and having all of these one-on-ones, I know, Jeff, you're doing a ton of one-on-ones over Zoom recently, but it's almost like sometimes you're in this mode of trying to listen to ask the next question instead of just letting your curiosity take over. And it's almost to a point where you're trying so hard to direct the conversation through questioning, when in reality, and I think it just really takes away from the conversation. I've gotten away from that. I used to have a list of questions I wanted to ask people on calls, and I still ask a lot of those questions, but in a lot more natural of a way. And going back to what do you like to, I always ask people, what are your hobbies? What do you do outside of work? Because at the end of the day, I think what they do outside of work tells a lot about how they act in work too sometimes. And it's always really interesting to see, especially Dan, you're a juggler. Like, there's a really fun thing, an icebreaker that we can talk about. And I'm going to remember so much more about you just because of that. And so being able to find a commonality, and then, you know, it's just more ways you can think of someone as well, instead of thinking them in a business sense. Like, now I can, you know, if I see a circus or someone juggling, hey, Dan, I just saw someone juggling with the same like rainbow balls that you juggled with on our podcast. It was so cool. Like, just reminded me, how are you? So just being able to find that little commonality that makes somebody a little bit more human outside of, you know, and I think that goes into what Lynne was saying at the beginning of the podcast, which is like, and we've had a lot of people come on and say that networking can be kind of a dirty word, in the sense that people really think that it's, oh, I'm going to go there, I'm going to exchange business cards. What can I get out of it? How can I drive business? When it's like, yeah, that's great, that'll all come, but build a relationship and a connection first.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was just going to say in the same vein, my question, I think it's pretty similar, that I like to use a lot, is tell me something that's not on your resume, right? And then it's very interesting because that can go a million different ways. But then it's always interesting, the person that always then ties it back into the resume and can't really do that, right? So it's fascinating. They can kind of share as much as they want or not. But and same thing there to what Dan was saying. The responses are incredibly poignant, and it's like, wow, that was deep, to surface level and everywhere in between. But that for me has been pretty fascinating with that question.
And I've been dying to ask this question because I think it ties right in. So I had asked Dan before we jumped on the podcast, what were some questions that he would like to talk about? So one of the things he said was talk about a relationship between networking and punk rock. So that is your cue, Dan. I want to know, tell me everything about how networking and punk rock relate.
Yeah, so my latest book is titled Punk, and it's about the intersection of punk rock and innovation. So what are kind of the punk principles and practices that can translate into like delivering creative solutions to hard problems? So what's the relationship between punk and networking? I think the thing I would hope people understand about punk is that punk is a scene. Punk is a scene, and that means it is a place where people come together. It's about the music, yes. It's about the fashion. There's like punk food. Like there's chapter 9, maybe. Anyway, one of the books or one of the chapters, they do talk about that too. So it's a culture, and punk is fundamentally about removing barriers to participation, welcoming the people who have historically been left out. And when we are actively trying to welcome the people who have been left out and excluded, you know, that there's something very attractive and something very punk about that. And so yeah, I think punk is probably more of a networking, connecting, bringing people together type of scene than some other scenes that can be a little exclusive. You know, other scenes can be like, hey, you're not cool enough to like this band. And punk is on a monolith. You'll find
back to high school. Name 3 songs. Are you really a fan of the band?
Right. Do you really like them? Right. So, you know, punk certainly has its downsides, and you will find like you don't have enough punk points to be in this space. But really, punk at its best, punk when it is at its healthiest, the best version tends to be all about, you know, creating opportunities for people who've otherwise been excluded. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah. Jeff, that reminds me of one of your favorite networking tips on how to stand.
Oh, what?
At a networking event.
Oh, yes. You don't want to stand like squared to the group you're in. Otherwise, people feel like they can't enter the group. So I always try to, you know, stand sort of at an angle to be welcoming. And sometimes people take that cue. Like the moment I see somebody starting to circle around, I'm like, open the circle, you know? Yes. Whereas I don't know if you ever find that, but it's like some people are just like, okay, I'm like, I guess I can't get into that group. Moving right along, it just makes you feel super awkward. It's like we're not here to make a connection and then exclude everyone else.
Right. It is funny how a stance changes things so much, right? Yeah. So in addition to a juggler and a punk, I'm a magician too. And I won't try to do this effect on the camera here, but one of my favorite new coin tricks is not done in this sort of mode. You're rotating, so like the person you're showing the trick to is sort of looking over your shoulder, and like they have the same view as you have. This is more competitive. This is more like intimate and inclusive. Like, watch while I put this, and then it disappears. It really changes the vibe and how the effect comes across. So I wish I was good enough at it to like do it here, but I'm working on that.
So Lynne, what one of the things that we love to ask on this podcast is, what advice do you give? We usually say to young people, but I'll just say more broadly, what advice would you give to people who are either less comfortable with networking or maybe a little new to networking? What is the advice that you give the most, or that you think people need the most?
Well, I think one thing is to just have them set an intention for whatever it is they want to achieve in the meeting. And that can be anything. It's their intention. But what's your intention as you go to this meeting? And make it something achievable. Like maybe it's make 2 connections or ask 1 question so that it feels like something they can do. And then I have found that with people that maybe struggle to make connections with other people, having some small goals like that can be super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great it's a great point. I think that, sometimes I think people go into networking, like, actually it's funny because I was mentioning before that, working with people who are job seekers looking for jobs, and like, do not go into a networking event or a networking conversation looking for a job, because you will upset the person. Because actually, what I've been saying to people recently is, people want to help you. I know it feels like they don't, but they actually do. The reason why it's so annoying to network when you're looking for a job is that people want to help you, but they can't help you. And then what happens is they feel bad that they can't help you. And now they're mad at you for making them feel bad about it.
Well, and I've also found that people really like to talk about themselves. So if you're asking a couple of questions, and Amelia, to your point, maybe you come in with one in your head and then you riff from there. But if people have the opportunity to talk about themselves and what's important to them, they are just going to like you better for no other reason than you asked them about themselves and took the time to listen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is that Dale Carnegie, be more interested than interested, or be more interested than interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then you had a great post on LinkedIn a little while back, asking people, other than the word networking, what's another word that you would use to describe that type of activity? Or, what's your reaction to the word networking, which has the word work in it?
I never thought about that, but it's so true.
Yeah. And I think we got some interesting answers on that. I don't know if you recall.
Yeah, my favorite one was Lacey Fabian said moment making. And I love that concept of moment making. And that every interaction that you have with somebody at an event is a moment that you and that other person make.
Totally.
I like that. I guess I'd be interested, Lynn and Dan, is, 3 months in, how is networking / moment making / connecting, whatever you want to call it, how has that changed, and what are you doing differently now, given the new approach, new business, compared to what you might have done in the past?
Oh, great question. I think we're trying to navigate the balance of how much time we're spending doing the networking and the moment making and like helping people, and also needing to do the business development, and also needing to do the back office stuff, like setting up QuickBooks and figuring out our website and our email and all the tech, and still wanting to genuinely connect with and listen to people. And some of these will turn into paid gigs and some of them won't, but we're not trying to Jeff, like you said, like coming and looking for a job and then that turns into all sorts of mess. But trying to find that right balance in terms of, given the limited amount of hours we have in a day, how much and how little and how often, I think is something we're working on and experimenting with. I don't know, Lynn, how about you? Any thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think exactly that. It's really not all that different from connecting when you're looking for a job. I mean, Dan and I are looking for gigs. We're looking for opportunities to help people. But it's the same, right? You go to who you know, you talk to who you know, you ask them about what they're up to. I think it's really pretty similar.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think that's exactly right. That in the end of the day, again, it comes back to that whole listening for the doorbell to ring kind of idea. Is like, I'm having a conversation with you and I'm really curious about what's going on with you. I'm listening for whether there's a place where I can be of help, right? Where I can, serve you in whatever way is possible. It could be I'm going to introduce you to somebody, whatever. But I'm looking to me, it's always about I'm looking to serve. How can I serve this person that I'm talking to? And I think you're right. I think they're very similar. Sort of selling conversation or networking and jobs, seeking that. Because people don't want you to tell them that, like, when I tell you, like, I'm looking for somebody to buy my wares, right? Like, I just told you what my problem is, right?
Right.
Like, I did not tell you that I'm the solution to a problem that you have. And sometimes you have conversations with people that are perfectly nice conversations where the proverbial doorbell never rings, right? And that's okay. So I think you're exactly right. I think that they're very similar, which is part of the reason why I think I was so keen on doing this group with these job seekers, because I'm like, it's the same thing. You should network to build your network, not network to get a job, to make a sale, whatever it is. And then the value will come from listening, being curious, making a broader connection.
And doing all that network building before you really need it. So it's like going grocery shopping before you're hungry. So if you go grocery shopping when you're hungry, like, you're going to make bad decisions. I think that posture of generosity tends to be reciprocal.
Yeah.
And so the other metaphor I like to use is, oh my gosh, and it just flew out of my head entirely here. Don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Go grocery shopping before you're hungry. It'll maybe come back to me.
It's okay. Something about juggling.
Yeah.
Well,
Dano and I have been in the work world a long time,
Yes.
so which means sometimes we forget things, but it also means that we have a really big network of connections,
Right.
which we're finding to be very helpful.
I remembered it.
all right.
When we think about listening as a practice, one of the questions that sometimes people will ask is, does being a good listener enable other people to not be good listeners? Like, if I'm a good listener, does that just enable bad behavior if the other person just keeps talking and talking and talking forever because I'm such a good listener? What we find is that doesn't tend to be the case sometimes, but like genuinely good listening, that's not just silence, but that's sort of participative, tends to foster good listening behavior for the person that you're having that conversation with.
Right.
And so just like generosity tends to lead to reciprocal, trust tends to get reciprocated, good listening tends to also be reciprocated as well. At least the people who study that tell me that tends to be the case, and that lines up with our experience as well.
It's like active listening, because I think when you're actively engaged in a conversation, then the other person naturally actively engages in the conversation. And then all of a sudden, because you're both interested in what each other are saying, all of a sudden you remember the conversation, you build a deeper connection. I hate doing this. This comes so fast every time, but we are at time. Yeah. So what that means is, first, we want to hear a little bit about some networking that is coming up for you too, that you want to promote. And then we also want to know where our listeners can connect with you. What's the easiest way?
So, all right, so I'll go first, and then Dan, you can say what you're doing, because mine is kind of fun, and you'll see what I'm about to do. I'm going to be volunteering at a water stop at Ironman, Maryland this Saturday in Cambridge, Maryland, and I think that is going to be a great opportunity for me to make connections, not just with the athletes who are coming by looking for liquids, but also with all of the spectators that are out there. So I'll be there talking about triathlon, but also probably talking about innovation.
Awesome. Love that. Dan?
I love it. Sometime end of this month, I'm going to be at the Women Applying AI event in Boston. And it's an amazing new organization that's trying to bring increased gender diversity into this AI space. And they do let guys come. I think it's important for men to be at events like this as well as supporters and allies and co-conspirators. So yeah, Women Applying AI, Boston, September 26th, I think is the date for that one.
And
Awesome.
Where can our listeners get in contact with you? And Dan, did you want to talk about your podcast that's coming up at all, or should I just shut up?
No, let me give a quick plug
Okay.
for that. Lynn and I are actually putting together a podcast titled "Listening for the Questions." The basic premise is, what are the questions that we should be asking when we talk about whatever the topic of the episode is, whether it's AI, power, burnout, magic is one of the topics we hit on as well. But yeah,
also sandwiches. We talk about
sandwiches.
What is the best sandwich.
Oh my goodness, the sandwich episode is so good. The sandwich episode is so good. You'll have to tune in and listen. So listening for the questions.
Now I'm curious.
Next week or so.
What does your sandwich preference say about you? I'm sure there's some psychology behind that.
That's the question we should be asking. Yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn.
You can find us on LinkedIn, Lynne Cupernull, it's like a cup, or Dan Ward, and the SparkLitGroup.com.
Awesome.
We'd love to connect.
Thank you so much.
Well, do you want to go first, Amelia? Go ahead.
I was going to ask you if you wanted to go first.
I will go. So I've actually been as Amelia mentioned before, I've been doing a lot of one-on-ones over the last 2 or 3 months. And so I have not done as many events, but somehow I have 3 events this week, one of which I talked about on the last episode, but one of which is tomorrow night. So I love supporting authors, having written a book, Dan, it's right behind me over this, I don't know, whatever, on the other side. But I always like to support authors. I'm going to a book launch event tomorrow for this guy that I met because I was thinking about writing a book, and he, ended up talking to him a couple years ago. I remember it was like deep in the middle of the pandemic. We were stuck in our houses and all that kind of stuff. And I remember talking to this guy. I've never met him live and in person, but I'm going to his book event. So really excited about that coming up. So that's my next event. I will pass it over to Amelia.
Yeah, hi. So I have 2 events I'm going to this week. One is with Fidelity Private Shares. They're having an event on Wednesday. It's just in the startup ecosystem, getting to know some founders, which I always love doing. And then it's the third week of the month. I always have Third Thursday. So monthly, I am a co-host of an event called Third Thursday, where we bring together investors, founders, and service providers to have a nice cocktail hour. There's no pitches. It's just strict conversation, getting to know people. And honestly, it's become one of my favorite events to do every month. It's just such a good group of people. Stephen, you're next and last.
It is a good event. The Third Thursdays are very good. So actually, super quick, I will say that my doorbell went off about 30 minutes ago when you talked about bad wine, because if I'm hosting a networking event and consulted for the wine, it's not going to be bad wine. I can assure you that. The rubbery chicken, I can't help you on that, but typically I consult with caterers too. So anyways, my doorbell did go off. But for me, I am actually hosting a roughly 100-person wine tasting with a FACNY. So the French-American Chamber of Commerce tomorrow at Foley Lardner. And so really looking forward to doing that with the wines that I do, given the French and American connection. It's really the perfect venue for me to do that in. So basically showcasing the old world, new world, and looking forward to a lot of fun and fantastic wine. And actually, I know the caterer as well. There will be no rubbery chicken. It'll actually be some really nice, fantastic treats.
Stephen made sure of that.
I made sure of that, of course.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation, Dan and Lynne. So great to hear your thoughts, to meet you, and very excited about your new podcast, and would love to get a chance to connect and get to know you all more. But thank you, and we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.